Mecca is a technological juggernaut built on top of a land rich in magic, though mostly devoid of magic itself. The advancements in technology have helped foster a community completely protected by indestructible infrastructure, taking on the form of many large skyscrapers and metallic buildings, enhanced vehicles for transportation, and impenetrable defenses in the event that anyone dared to stand against them. You would then think that Mecca was predominantly run by artificial intelligence, computers, or robots, but the need for Rumans controlling the society is at an all-time high, and keeping Rumans hands-on with the system is a key point often made by the cyborg goddess and ruler of Mecca, Sybil. Sybil has far transcended what it means to be a normal Ruman, but deep inside she knows it's in her roots. Therefore, to fully remove Rumans from the Mecca equation is an option she has never even considered. At the end of the day, they are the heart and soul of Mecca, and without them, Mecca would feel lifeless. The resistance from her people is the only reason she ended up in power to begin with, and to remove that resistance means to stop growing as a society. Sure, technology will continue to evolve and advance, with Sybil benefiting the most from these enhancements, but the opinions of normal Rumans is the key to the future success of Mecca and its expansion. It is this idea of expansion that frightens the rest of the world. Those not in Mecca and living in the rest of Ruma are constantly on edge because at any given moment, Sybil can decide to expand Mecca and not a single living thing on the planet could stop her. Her power has grown exponentially and completely out of control, and the rest of Ruma is at her mercy. Luckily for the rest of Ruma, she has yet to act, and no one really knows why. But Sybil has proven to be a smart and methodical leader, whose choices always seem to be accompanied with lengthy, thought-out, and calculated maneuvers. Whenever she decides to act against the rest of the world, you will know that she has taken into account every variable. That alone makes the idea of her pushing out into the rest of Ruma frightening, because you know that when she finally chooses to do it, it will be on her own terms, and it is very unlikely that she will lose. In the meantime, the Rumans most at ease are those living in Mecca. Sure, the inevitable resistance from those outside of Mecca will eventually come to their doorsteps, but it's hard to be concerned when you are clearly on the winning side. Those under Sybil's protection in Mecca have the best chance of winning. Magic is unpredictable and could potentially turn the tide in a battle against Sybil, but if you stack the probability of there being magic strong enough to defeat her versus the guaranteed power of Mecca's technology and military advancements, it's more than likely that Mecca will come out on top. So while the rest of the world is in panic awaiting the cyborg goddess to welcome them with open arms into her utopia, or destroy them to make more room for her own people, the actual Rumans living in Mecca are just living out their lives. Working their jobs, raising their families, living safe and fulfilled lives under the protection of Sybil's technology. While most Rumans in Mecca are unconcerned with Sybil's schemes as long as she keeps them safe, others worry about the future of the planet. Sybil's rise to power all began with the Rumans in Mecca jealous of Magia's magic in the south, which had been given to them by the gods and goddesses when the North received their advanced tech. If Sybil could find a way to bring this magic to the people of Mecca, it could be the perfect combination of the two things Rumans have been blessed with and have craved since Ruma's inception. Yet it leaves Rumans to wonder, at what cost will this perfect balance come at? Magia is not going to give Sybil the means in which to conduct experiments to extract that balance, and if Sybil so desires to take it by force, how would the landscape of Ruma change as a result? The unfortunate truth is that there are very few ways where this doesn't end in bloodshed and the loss of many, many Ruman lives. Rumans, especially in Magia, believe the only way to stop Sybil lies in something called the Iron Prophecy, that a Ruman would be born in Mecca with Magia's natural magic and be the chosen one, set up to defeat Sybil and bring peace to Ruma. Sai, the head of the Magian Council, believes this Ruman has been born and is living among them. He has sent a Ruman named Z and another Ruman named Delavue to infiltrate Mecca with teleportation magic to spy on the cyborg goddess and the happenings of Mecca. It was not as difficult as Z expected it to be for them to blend in. Sai had given them some of Mecca's currency to use, a gesture that made Z curious as to how Sai obtained currency outside of Magia, but felt it best not to question it. The two quickly found an apartment to live in and jobs. They both worked at one of the many factories set up in Mecca, but chose to work at different companies not to raise suspicions. This was concerning for Z, who was sent on this mission mostly to keep an eye on Delavue, as the young Ruman woman was very unpredictable. Obviously, he couldn't do his job if he was separated from her, but both Z and Sai felt separate jobs were a necessity in case one of their covers was blown. One day when Z was working in his factory, the workers were told that a city supervisor was coming to visit. This meant that the factory needed to be in tip-top shape and look as presentable as possible. Z was normally on packaging duty, but on this particular day he wore many hats. He helped with maintenance, unloading trucks, and stocking parts. After all the crazy preparation was done, he went to his usual place in a long line on a conveyor belt, where he helped fellow Mecha Rumans package some of Mecha's signature advanced tech. While doing his job, he couldn't help but notice that anyone in his factory that was of a higher station than his own looked extra nervous. More nervous than he saw them earlier in the day, and he noticed them moving with extreme haste throughout the factory as he worked. Word among the conveyor belt was that the supervisor had arrived, so that could explain the heightened nerves, but something seemed off. That is when the city supervisor entered Z's part of the factory, and much to everyone's surprise, they did not send a city supervisor at all. It was Sybil. Z had never seen her in person before. Most Magians had not for obvious reasons. Depictions of Sybil in books and Magia must be outdated or over-exaggerated, because she looked nothing like what he had seen, but somehow he could tell it was her. Z expected metal casings and more of a robot look to her, but she looked like a normal Ruman. There was nothing robotic about her, nor did anything necessarily scream goddess about her appearance. That godlike feeling came just from her mere presence. How could someone so normal-looking be such a threat to the entire planet? Z tried to continue to work as his thoughts ran wild, but he couldn't help notice that Sybil looked in his direction once or twice while she spoke to the worker designated to show her around the factory. They walked past his area, and she didn't look at him again as they left the room. All Z could think as he went back to working was if Delavue was safe. He finished work and headed home to meet up with Delavue. She was waiting outside their apartment for him. She looked annoyed. "Tough day at work?" Z asked, trying not to bring up his interaction with Sybil. Delavue had a devious smirk on her face, which Z figured was bad news for him. "Well, if you consider getting fired tough, how about you?" Z sighed. "You got fired?" Delavue got up as Z opened the door to their apartment and they went inside together. "What happened to flying under the radar?" Delavue folded her arms. "Some annoying supervisor lady came in and was staring at me. What was I supposed to do, not say something?" Z stopped dead in his tracks and put his hands to his head. "Did I do something wrong?" Z didn't answer her right away, but finally said, "That supervisor lady was Sybil, and we're as good as dead."